His demeanor was kind of above everything. His eyes were really cold. I could see that he was a different person. Different.
It was a phone call in June 1998, almost 3 years after the disappearance, that began to unlock the mystery. John McCormick got a call from a man about his missing brother.
He said his brother, Danny Fry, had gone to San Antonio in the summer of '95 at the behest of a person named David Waters. And that name, of course, rang a loud bell in my mind because he was the former office manager of the O'Hairs in Austin and a convicted murderer and an all-around bad guy. So for the first time since they disappeared, a coherent picture started to come together because you have some, very dangerous people, you have a lot of money, and you have people disappearing.
That phone call opened the door to a gothic murder story. McCormick's investigations identified a headless, handless body as the missing Danny Fry, who was a small-time con man who'd vanished at the same time as Madalyn and her family. David Waters was still denying everything. Before he published his story naming Waters as the prime suspect, McCormick moved his family out of his house.
I also asked my neighbor if he would be available to come shoot someone if I had a crisis, and he said he was available, this being Texas. So he said basically just tell me which one to shoot.
The trail of investigations led to a drab motel called the Warren Inn outside San Antonio, not far from Corey Tickner's gold and jewelry store. Over the month following the O'Hairs' sudden disappearance, the final act of America's most hated woman was played out here. Kidnapped and held hostage at the Warren Inn for 4 weeks, the three O'Hairs were made to play out a surreal drama. Their jailers were Waters, his violent prison buddy Gary Carr, and Danny Fry.
The O'Hairs didn't do anything. They just kind of went along with the program. You know, Madalyn had her medicine, and they would eat food, and they went to Blockbuster and rented games and videos, and, you know, the standard thing that an American would do, but at the same time, they were captives. So it's kind of odd. Danny Fry and Waters and Gary Carr all carried weapons, so they were always armed around the O'Hairs. And they survived there for 30 days. Well, at the end of the time, which was about September the 27th, other plans start to take shape.
With the gold coins delivered by John Murray, the family were moved from the Warren Inn to a nearby motel, one with more private vehicle access.
They took possession of the gold, and then later on that afternoon, they killed John. They strangled him. When we did find the body, he had a plastic bag over his head. After they killed him, they went into the other bedroom and then they strangled Madalyn and Robin. And that evening, they just took the bodies and put them into the van, transferred them out of the hotel, which was on the ground floor, into this van, and then drove them back to Austin.
David Waters wanted to, stand over Madalyn Murray O'Hair's dead body and say, "I'm standing, you're dead," because she jerked him around, she humiliated him in public, and he wasn't used to this, and he knew how to solve problems. He killed people,
Austin is ringed by anonymous storage units. After parking the bodies of the three O'Hairs in their van, Waters and his colleagues stowed the gold here in Unit 1640. For 3 years, investigators working on the O'Hair case were puzzled about the gold. Waters was the chief suspect, but he lived like a man with no money at all.
I was able to watch him in the mornings with his cup of coffee before he'd go to work and wonder about, here's a man that is very, very thin and driving an old car, yet he's got possession of $500,000. So I always wondered what had happened. How could he not be spending that money?
The answer to that question about the gold stored in Unit 1640 was to be one of the most improbable episodes of the story. Just across the road, I found the Poodle Dog Lounge, where Waters' girlfriend, Patty Jo Steffens, worked. I had a drink in the sleazy Poodle Dog with Ed Martin. I kept thinking about Patty Jo and her murderous boyfriend, David Waters, who beat her up and used her. And I discovered how this tough, intelligent girl finally destroyed him. It was John McCormick's story identifying Waters' murdered henchman, Danny Fry, which finally sent Patty Jo to the FBI.
Well, the first time that Mr. Waters' girlfriend arrived at our office, it was very intense. Here's a woman who is scared to death. She's fearful that her ex-boyfriend is going to kill her. And so she was someone that we had to go slowly with. She did provide us with the information that we needed, and because of her and others, we were able to solve this case.
Patty Jo's story led the FBI to a gruesome sequence of events following the murder of the O'Hairs. The bodies were butchered by Gary Carr in another storage unit and stuffed into 55-gallon drums. Then the murderers went for breakfast. They hosed down the storage place with chemicals. Patty Jo reported that Waters returned to his apartment smelling of bleach. The next day, Waters and Carr murdered Danny Fry. They chopped off his head and his hands. The identification 3 years later of Danny Fry and Patty Jo's story were the end of the road for David Waters.
The thing exploded. They raided Waters' apartment in Austin. They raided Gary Carr's in Chicago. And then once these guys were all locked up, we all could relax a little more.
Mr. Waters.
The legal processes wound on for almost 2 years. With no bodies and no money, the cases against Waters and Carr were difficult to build. But violations of probation and firearms were enough to lock away both men for life.
Confinement for 60 years.
The damning testimony of Patty Jo Steffens finally slammed the cell doors.
Pull her toes off with pliers, or...
Do you have any comment, David?
What's up, sir?
Hell hath no fury like a woman scorned.
The murderers of Madalyn Murray O'Hair were behind bars, but there were still no bodies. It was to be more than 5 years after the murders before that mystery was resolved. There was an answer at last to the disappearance of $500,000 in gold coins.
They put a $5 lock on a storage unit that retained $500,000 in gold. When David Waters went to pick up the gold, it was not there. The gold was gone. What happened to the gold was, stranger than fiction, I guess, 3 young men from San Antonio that were burglarizing storage units came to Austin. They were happy. They didn't know how much they had, but they were real happy. And they divided all of that gold up. Just sat around with little Tupperware bowls, they said, just put gold coins in it.
They hit the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, and then they went and blew it on cars and strippers and women and apartments and trips.
Of the $500,000, which cost the O'Hairs their lives, only a single coin was ever found. I had one final chapter of Madalyn's story to explore. It was the puzzle of what had happened to the remains of the 3 O'Hairs, still missing even after her murderers were locked up. But first I wanted to catch up with the inheritors of Madalyn's atheist legacy.